Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Maximize Excellence. I'm Lori Harris. I'm managing partner of Harris White Cell Consulting, and I'm your host today. And I have a wonderful guest. I'm very, very excited about James being here today with us. James Jarvis. He serves as the executive director for the American Red Cross of the Cape Fear area of North Carolina. And in this capacity, he oversees all Red Cross operations in 12 counties in eastern North Carolina, and that includes Brunswick, Carteret, Columbus, Craven, Duplin, Jones, Lenoir, New Hanover, where they're headquartered, Onslow, Pamlico, Pender, and Wayne. And prior to joining the American Red Cross as a public affairs volunteer back in 2013, James was a full-time employee in July 2014. James served honorably as a U.S. Marine Corps major, correct, James? For nearly in his rank over a 23-year period, and retired in 2011. During his decorated military career, James served as an enlisted Marine and officer while completing combat tours in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Liberia. And for the American Red Cross, James served also in the capacity as disaster program specialist for the Cape Fear chapter from 2014 to 2016, with territorial responsibilities for all disaster responses in Brunswick, Columbus, Duplin, New Hanover, and Pender counties. And as a service to the Armed Forces manager, James worked with committed staff and volunteers to fulfill important mission of providing humanitarian support to service members, veterans, and their families around the clock and around the globe under the trusted symbol of the Red Cross. In addition to the important work of building strong and resilient military families, James and his volunteers are also working hard to end veteran homelessness and suicides. Finally, as executive director for the American Red Cross, James works with dedicated group of volunteers who prevent and alleviate human suffering every day in eastern North Carolina, as well as a board of directors and numerous advisory boards committed to ensuring that the American Red Cross remains ready to assist people in their need for decades to come. James is a graduate of the University of Oklahoma, where he obtained a BBA in Management Information Systems and was summa cum laude, and Western University, where he got his MBA. He and his wife, Heather, reside in Wilmington and have a daughter, Hunter, and two sons, Chase and Dashiell. Dashiell. Welcome, James. I love this intro, and all of this about him has exponential effect in our community, in our state, and within this organization. James, you are an authentic leader, and I welcome you.
Well, thank you very much. I realized as you were reading all that my bio is entirely too long. But no, thank you very much. I will say that all of those opportunities kind of shaped the leader I am today. So, life experience helps influence great outcomes.
Absolutely. So, having worked with you and your board of directors, James, I learned that the Red Cross offers a variety of services in our community that many people might not know about. Sure. Can you briefly share a few of those lesser known services?
Sure. And I do think that most people think of blood. So whenever they see me, it's like, I've already given blood today, so don't need to stick me today. So, but yes, we collect 40% of our nation's blood supply. And they also think of us in terms of large scale disasters, hurricanes, tornadoes, Godzilla, whatever the case may be. But the thing that we respond to more than anything else are actually single family house fires. So when somebody experiences a home fire, the Red Cross is there to help them regardless of the time of day. We give them money for food, money for clothing. We put them up in a hotel for 3 nights. We help replace medications or medical equipment that was lost in the fire. We have disaster mental health services that can help them, in case they lost pets, or, certainly when you lose all of your possessions, it's very traumatic. And if you lose a pet or a family member, that just compounds upon that. So, and then the other thing we do is take care of our military families. Right now, my colleague, Deb Moore, is forward deployed in Bulgaria to help with the Ukrainian crisis there for service members that are deployed in the region. She returned home after having deployed to Iraq for 6 months. And she was home for 6 weeks and she went right back out. And so she's a Red Cross employee, but she's a civilian. So wherever our U.S. service members go, the Red Cross is there with them. So a lot of those lesser known services that are incredibly important.
What's one way that you strive to maximize excellence with your board and taking a deeper dive into their talents and interests and matching their purpose and their competencies and optimizing their talents with the mission? And can you please get into detail about that a little bit, what you've done?
Sure. So one of the great things we did is worked with you, with our board of directors, and tried to have a deeper dive into what motivates and demotivates each of our board members. What is it that they're passionate about? How do they like to communicate? What are ways in which, they like to be recognized, and or, what's the best way to present information to them such that they can process it, take ownership of it, and then help us advance our mission. So one of the things I worked with you and our board was working with Forte, which is a tool to help understand how they communicate with one another, how they like to be communicated with, helped come up with their motivators and demotivators. What are the types of things that really inspire them? So that way we can tailor our engagement with each of our board members and them with one another based upon really who they are as people, who they are as leaders. And so once I was able to do that and better understand where my board members were coming from, we could work together to align their talents and interests with those elements of our mission where they can be most successful. So I will say that it was a great learning experience for all of us to better understand how we can best work together and take the greatest advantage of our myriad of talents.
And there are many. Yeah, you've got a dynamic, exceptional board. And it's proven over a period of years here as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I've heard you say many times that nonprofit work is people business and it's contingent upon relationships. This is a great, listen up, everybody, because this really is something very unique and special that James talks about. And we often as leaders, we forget it. We put it aside sometimes and we forget this. So talk about this, James.
Sure. So, one of the worst times to meet somebody is during a crisis. So, when you're heavily impacted by a disaster like a hurricane or some other type of, or the pandemic even, when you're heavily impacted and your organization is heavily impacted, that's not the best time to get out and meet your counterparts who are experiencing many of the same things. So what I encourage folks to do is to get out and cultivate those relationships in advance because, and I'll give you a prime example. During Hurricane Florence, for example, one of my counties had a shelter that had been cut off. The water had been off, the water had been contaminated. And so the folks in that shelter had not had a shower in a week. And so I reached out to one of my counterparts, the wonderful and talented JC Lyle of WARM, the Wilmington Area Rebuilding Ministry. And I knew that she had a shelter trailer. So I reached out to her. I made arrangements to go pick it up, make sure that it's ready to go, and then delivered it to that shelter so those folks could have a shower. It's a small thing, but it really does mean a lot when you're dealing with everything else related to a large scale disaster like that. And something as simple as being able to shower really means a lot. And that was a result of a relationship that I had cultivated with JC long before the storm ever got here. And so I would say you need to take the time to invest in those relationships.
So let's talk about that. I want to stay here a little bit because you have a board, I believe it's 16, 17, but you have capacity for a little bit larger than that.
That's
and
right.
Those relationships they're dynamic, but
Sure.
they are critical to the mission of this organization.
Right.
So again, this is about, people and relationships. Talk about where you were when you first came on board and the transformation, I guess, the transition that you made with this philosophy through this board and with these individuals.
Sure. I think that we sometimes underestimate the value and the power that our board members bring to the table. These are all high level, high performing individuals, C-suite level executives that you bring onto your board because they're top performers. And so I think that when I first came into this job 5 years ago, a big part of what we were doing at the time was mostly, the executive director coming in and sharing, here are the updates, here are all of the programs we have underway, the board listening, providing guidance, providing strategic vision and contributions, but then everybody going home, and then we'll do it again next month. And so what I have tried to do over my 5 years is migrate our board to a working board. So my board has 5 committees. We work on biomedical, which is bigger and better blood drives. We work on board development, so selecting the right people, the right mix of people that's going to make us be a highly productive and successful board of directors. We've got diversity, equity, and inclusion, because it's incredibly important that our volunteer base represent the communities that we serve, and that we have a more diverse blood supply, which is critically important. We've got a mission committee because our organization is 94% volunteers, so no volunteers, no mission. So our mission committee helps us find great volunteers, just like you. And then lastly, our philanthropy committee. At the end of the day, we're not a government agency. We rely on donations in order to deliver our critical services. And so our philanthropy committee really works to open doors for us to share our mission with others.
And that's unique in that it's unique to nonprofits because, and elaborate on this, and how important it is for individuals like myself, whether it's a volunteer, a donor, someone who's looking in kind, someone who's seeking to utilize your services. The importance is that each year you start fresh, you start anew. And sometimes it even means you've got a new board member that you're either bringing on board or you're transitioning out as well. How does that play out with this relationships piece that you've got? Yeah.
Sure. A lot of nonprofits, operate on a razor thin margin. And it is a case that every year is anew. You could have had a very successful year last year, but once that clock switches over to the next year, it's what have you done for me lately? So, it's important that we have the funds to deliver the mission, because ultimately, at the end of the day, there is a client at the end of that. There is someone who's experienced a disaster, someone who needs that life-saving blood, someone who's a military family just trying to get their service member home. There's somebody on the other end of that line. And so it's important that we have the resources to help them in their most pressing time of need. Nobody ends up in a disaster shelter because they want to be there. They're there because they don't have anywhere else to go. And so we want to make sure that we're making them comfortable while they're there and helping to facilitate getting them back into stable housing once the event is over.
James, I want to make note of something here in this region where we're headquartered, where you're headquartered. Of course, hurricanes, tornadoes, flooding. There's a lot of things that go on in regards to disaster.
Sure.
And you guys are on it. You're there, you're in the disaster and emergency preparedness, you're on top. However, that doesn't stop for you guys as well, because there are other areas of the country where disasters happen that are in different seasons than us, and you attend to those. So talk a little bit about disaster and what kind of services you provide locally, regionally, as well as abroad.
Sure. So, that is one of the big advantages to my organization is we have great surge capability.
Yes.
So when Hurricane Florence, for example, came in and parked over Eastern North Carolina for 4 days, dumping 10 trillion gallons of water, we had 7,200 volunteers from all across the country and Canada that came to help us. And similarly, when the Gulf Coast, when Louisiana got hit 5 times last year, we had volunteers that deployed from here to go to there to help them. We've gone to California and the West to help with wildfires. We've helped with flooding in the Midwest. We're helping with a train derailment right now. There's flash flooding up in West Virginia. And our volunteers go wherever they are needed. In my time in the Marine Corps, Marines are trained to run to the sound of gunfire. And similarly, Red Crossers run to the sounds of people who need help. And so I'm proud to work for an organization that is willing to go wherever we're needed to help people in their greatest times of need.
Continue to expand. How many units of blood, et cetera, and home fires? Give us a little bit of statistics that you served last year, this past year.
Sure. So, we try to collect blood to make sure that we have everything that our hospitals need. So we have to collect 13,500 units of blood each and every day in this country to meet the needs of 2,400 hospitals that depend on that blood. And so we can't afford to have gaps in the schedule. So we collect in our region, we probably collect close to 500 pints of blood each and every day here. And then in terms of disasters, we help disasters wherever they may be. In my 12 county chapter, we average roughly 6 to 8 fires every week, year round, week after week, year round. And so those are 6 to 8 families that need help, and they need help right now. So I believe in this past year, we've helped thousands of families across Eastern North Carolina. I know that we have done, we've helped dozens, if not hundreds of families with service to the armed forces as well. Whenever a military family has a pressing need, it could be when there's a death in the family, it could be when someone is in the hospital, could be good news, could be somebody having a baby. We want to make sure that service member abroad knows that, he or she's about to, I guess she would know she's abroad, she's about to have a baby, but, we try to make sure that we're connected wherever we're needed.
Now, I don't want to negate or forget all the training and certification programs that you have as well, that you offer, that are very intricately webbed and weaved into the communities at large. What are those?
Yeah, so one of the greatest honors I get to do as an executive director is to present life-saving awards when somebody uses their Red Cross training to save a life. We offer adult and pediatric first aid, CPR, and AED classes. There was a veteran at Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point, 84 years old, who was running on the treadmill, and he happened to collapse. And 2 people who worked there at the fitness center had both been trained by the American Red Cross. They jumped into action. They used the AED. They performed CPR on him for 6 minutes. And he was alive for us to present a life-saving award to those 2 first responders, Good Samaritans, life-saving award signed by the President of the United States. So that's the best thing I get to do. But we do offer adult and pediatric first aid, CPR, and AED. We offer babysitting classes for kids as young as 11, where they get pediatric first aid and CPR training They also learn about appropriate activities for babysitters. So don't show Texas Chainsaw Massacre like our babysitter did, for example, that we never used again. But and there's also a small business component for that, because if you're a babysitter, you're an independent contractor. So we help them kind of understand, don't overcommit yourself, make sure that you're maintaining those relationships with the parents. So lots of great training and certifications that we offer.
There are.
As well as lifeguard training, so for the folks that protect our beaches, protect our swimming pools, that's all training that we offer as well.
Excellent. All right, James, you're a retired Marine officer, and you've served more than 22 years in uniform and still wearing one, by the way.
I did. Yes, I am.
Yes. Have you been able to apply that leadership experience to this nonprofit work? And if so, how?
I certainly believe so. I had the good fortune to rise up through the ranks. I made it up to staff sergeant before I crossed over to become an officer. So, I think that's helped me to have perspective. And so, I've been a disaster client. I know what it's like to be on the other side of that transaction. I've been a service member who was helped by the Red Cross. So I think it does help you if you can kind of see things through the lens of the people you're helping. I think that puts you in a much better place. A big part of what we learned in the military was know your troops and look out for their welfare. And so the same thing, know your staff, know your volunteers, make sure that you're helping them pace themselves. They're not trying to overcommit themselves. So I think all of those lessons learned have served me well to make sure that I can be that servant leader that's going to try to find ways to help my people be successful. And at the end of the day, that's what we're looking to do, is have all of us working toward the same goal.
Right. And I say this from a genuine heart. You're a great leader. How did executive coaching help you become even more effective?
I think the executive coaching, helped me do a critical self-evaluation. A lot of times you're in the heat of it. You're trying to make things happen. You don't necessarily take the time to look at your own strengths and weaknesses and try to figure out, for your weaknesses, for example, what can you do to address those? How can you become a better listener? How can you take the time to put together a strategic vision for your organization? It doesn't happen just organically. You have to invest time and effort in these things. And so I think the executive coaching for me really gave me an opportunity to look at what I'm doing well, look at where my blind spots are, and then try to come up with a way to address those. And then sometimes just recognizing that part of that is just me. Mm-hmm. I am going to say sarcastic things from time to time. It's going to happen. I know it. So, but it's a matter of trying to pick my times when it's appropriate, know when the situation calls for some levity, and know when I really need to focus in because they're looking to me for leadership and guidance in this particular moment.
Excellent. So I'm going to move on here. The Red Cross has a unique staffing model with 94% of your workforce coming from volunteers. What are some of the benefits and challenges that such a structure creates? And for you as a leader, not just the benefits and challenges that the structure creates, but also for you as a leader. Does that make sense?
Sure. So I think some of the benefits are you have so many different talents that are being brought to bear. You've got folks that retired and were senior executives. You've got folks that handled logistics for FedEx across the entire country, for example, or ran a manufacturing facility somewhere, or did public relations for a Fortune 500 company that is now retired and living in your area and would like to be a volunteer. Or you've got folks on the other end of the spectrum that are just getting their careers started and are looking for opportunities to, give back to their community. And so I think the one largest benefit from having this volunteer model is that you have so many varied perspectives, so many varied experiences that you can bring to bear. You have folks that are inspired by your mission, and that's why they're coming to volunteer with you. And so I think what comes with that is a lot of passion. You have folks that really love what they're doing. They love being there when somebody needs them. That's the reason they got into this. That's the reason they want to do it. So I think those are all strong benefits. You've got great, as I mentioned earlier, surge capability to send folks all across the country to help. Some of the challenges, as I mentioned, I served in the Marines for 22 years. I was used to having a gunny or a master sergeant where, hey, master sergeant, we need to get this done. He's like, oh yeah, no problem, sir. I'm on it. Whereas with the volunteer, I could say, hey, I'd really like for you to do this. And like, you know what? Yeah, I don't feel like doing that. So, there's a little more salesmanship in it, on this side of the house. And so, but it does help you become a better communicator. It helps you align, people's interests with what they're doing. So I think that at the end of the day, from a leadership perspective, it again, it comes back to knowing your people, know what they're inspired by, know what they like to do, and give them those opportunities to excel.
Mm-hmm. Share a little bit more about how you've aligned values, not just with volunteers, but also the board. Well, they're volunteers as well, actually, when you look at it.
Sure.
But and the small team of paid staff that you have, and why are values so important, and why aligning values are so important in your organization?
I think aligning values, at the end of the day, it all comes down to our mission to prevent and alleviate suffering in the face of emergencies by mobilizing the power of our volunteers and the generosity of our donors. So the volunteers are the engine. They're the ones that make everything work. My board of directors are all volunteers. We have a very small support staff in our region. And so I think the values are really important to make folks know that we're an inclusive organization. We are going to help everyone. When you look at, situations where, people are suffering, we're going to help them regardless, of whether they're a homeowner or a renter, regardless of their immigration status, for example. In keeping with our values, we're going to help those that need help. And I also think it's important when you have your board of directors to make sure that they share those same values. And we talk about the values discussion because, what's important to us, this is the foundation of everything. Mm-hmm. And so making sure that we're all rowing in the same direction. I think that the values discussion is important. So that way folks know what's important to us, where the priorities are. So that way we can ask ourselves every day, what am I doing today to help advance our mission?
Mm-hmm. And we've already talked about your board, and we talked about the growth when you first came on board and the changes that you implemented. What are you looking forward to for this year and the upcoming years as well in regards to maximizing excellence and impacting the community in a positive, lasting way?
Sure. The one thing I'll say, and I don't want to give myself too much credit for this, but on the advancing the board and kind of changing the way and the structure and the way in which we did that, that was a we thing. So my board and I worked collaboratively to do that. I talked to them about what the idea was, what the vision was, but they bought in. They've seen it work in their own organizations. They bring a lot of experience. And so we collaboratively worked together and decided, let's be more involved. Let's give our board members more opportunities to touch the mission, because ultimately you want to be inspired and see the fruits of your labor. You want to see what you're doing. So I think that was a collective approach that we took over my past 5 years to work together to change our board to make it more of a working board. Now, what I'm excited about for the years to come, there are so many great partnership opportunities. One of the things we're really looking forward to doing is coming in with a collaborative approach when we're talking about engaging companies, organizations, our senior centers, for example, offering them hands-only CPR so they learn the critical skills to save a life. including with that the adult choking component, because that's the emergency you're most likely to encounter, in a restaurant or somewhere else. So offering them Sound the Alarm, which is our free smoke alarm program that helps save lives. We're up to 1,356 lives, including 402 children that have been saved across the country thanks to our free smoke alarm program. We've already installed more than 2.3 million smoke alarms nationwide. Offering them the opportunity to host blood drives, that's incredibly important. Volunteer opportunities. And then we also have a great program through our Service to the Armed Forces program called Stress Solutions, which is a stress management program. So the point is coming in with a collaborative approach and offering all of these, as a menu for you to choose from. I think that's what differentiates us from a lot of other organizations is we have a full spectrum of services that we contribute to the community. And it's not just one particular area.
Humanitarian is such an important word with Red Cross. What does that mean to you personally?
I think personally, it means being there when somebody needs you. I had an opportunity to serve in Liberia when rebel factions were closing in on the capital, and we went in there as a peace enforcement force to try to stop the warring factions from fighting one another. And you saw the suffering that war can do. I mean, it really was brutal. And so, but we came in, we stopped that. And, now they're in a much better place than they were back in 2004 when I was there in Monrovia. I think I've seen across the country. I deployed to Kentucky last year, at the end of last year in December, day after Christmas, to help with the tornado that was there. I met a family where a father literally held the roof up on his back so his two young kids could climb out. Just the level of devastation. I've not seen anything like that since I was in Baghdad. And so, I think that being a humanitarian is saying, I'm going to be there for you. If you need me, I'm going to be there. And so I think we've got thousands of volunteers that are willing to do that. And so to me, being a humanitarian is opening your heart and being there to help somebody when they need you.
Love it. So in closing, what recommendations would you give to other leaders, if they are nonprofit or not, in maximizing excellence?
I think that there's a few things that you can do. One, you need to do that critical self-evaluation. You need to look at yourself in the mirror, come up and do if you were an impartial third party looking at you, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? And try to look at it from somebody else's perspective. I think the same thing, if you have a board of directors, you really need to get to know those folks. You need to know what motivates them, what demotivates them, how they like to communicate and where their passion lies. They may have a personal story that connects them to a certain aspect of your mission. So that might be where they're going to be the most inspired. And so get to know your people, find out what they're passionate about, and see how you can align that with things that you're doing in the community. And then finally, take the time to look for opportunities when things are going great. I think a lot of us are hardwired to see where the problems are and try to fix those and try to point them out. But take the time to capture people doing something great too. And make sure that when you praise them, you're very specific about what you're praising them about. But look for those good things that are going on too, because they're all around you if you pay attention.
Absolutely. Great advice. So assessment, self-evaluation, get to know your people, get to know your team, take time to catch people doing something great and let them know.
That's
communication, right? Those are great things. James, thank you very much for everything today. I learned a little bit more. I'm heavily invested in your organization and love what you do. I absolutely am proud of your leadership in this organization and in our community at large, this whole region. You've done well and you're continuing that momentum and love your growth. by the way. You continue to challenge yourself on lots of things, and I see that growth, and you're becoming better and better. So congratulations on all of that. And I want to make sure, give me 1 second. I want to make sure if there's any other comments here. I appreciate your time and your energy, and I look forward to continuing the volunteerism with you. Is there anything, any last minute comment that you want to make, or people sharing with people how they can get in touch with you or the organization?
Sure. So a couple things. First, I wanted to thank you for all of your help, both helping me personally to grow as a leader and as an executive. And then also helping our board. It took some convincing to get them to want to become invested, but I will say that I'm seeing and I'm realizing the fruits of that labor. So thank you very much. The second thing, if they want to contact us, you want to know more about what your American Red Cross is doing in the community, you can always go to redcross.org. You can see the full suite of everything we have to offer. If you'd like to join us, you can go to redcross.org/volunteer, pick up a vest and help us do great things in your community. And lastly, you can find us on social media at American Red Cross of Eastern North Carolina. You can see all the photos of our volunteers in action, just lots of great things. So really appreciate the time today. Love talking about my organization, love what I do. And again, appreciate all that you did for us, Lori, and continue to do.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'm honored, honestly, to work with such a great team of people and a good leader like you are. You're very effective. Thank you again. Thank you, everybody. This is another episode of Maximize Excellence, and we look forward to our next one. Thank you. And stay tuned. Each month, we offer just a direct conversation with leaders like James, coming in and talking about what they're doing to maximize excellence for themselves and their organization and their teams and their communities, by the way, with this one in particular.
Absolutely.
So we appreciate everything, and we hope to see you soon. Please reach out if you need anything, harriswhitecellconsulting.com, and we look forward to talking with you. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Maximize Excellence. Visit our events page on our website for details on upcoming podcasts, and visit our YouTube channel to listen to past episodes. And remember to ask yourself at the end of each day, did I do my best to maximize excellence today?